Go.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome, Dave. Looking forward to this conversation. So, for everybody out there, today we're going to be talking about an interesting topic, concierge utility. What is a concierge utility? And Dave March, CEO of Exergy Energy, welcome to the conversation this afternoon.
Yeah, good to see you again, Randall.
Quick housekeeping for everybody. If you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat function in the conversation. And then if we're not able to address your question during the session today, we'll make sure that we get those questions addressed and out to the community. So Dave, what is a concierge utility? Let's start there.
Okay. Well, let's take it from the following perspective. So a concierge utility is an organization. Exergy Energy is a concierge utility that comes into an organization, it can be a company, a business, an institution, and deeply, deeply studies and understands their use of energy and power. Mm-hmm. But then more than just consulting, we will then take that knowledge and craft a solution. What is the best way to meet I'm going to say the broad goals and objectives of that organization, sustainability, resiliency, and all that? We'll come up with a plan, a design, we'll execute it, we'll implement it, we'll manage it, we'll service it, we'll maintain it so that that organization has customized energy and power solution at no upfront cost to them. So in that sense of we're a concierge utility, we bill as you would be billed from the normal utility, right? On the power you use, et cetera, except that it has been designed specifically for your needs. And that's what we do. And in general, what companies achieve on that is they'll get more reliable power, lower cost power, more sustainable power, and more resiliency in a sense of, if it makes sense, with backup generators and things like that. If there's outages, they keep on running. So I guess one way to do it is to throw the grid under the bus a little bit, right? So the standard utility or the standard grid is pretty much a one size is supposed to fit all. Never does, but it's a compromise. It's sort of a public good. And you can have anything you want, as the old Model T Henry Ford thing, anything you want as long as it's black. You can have all the power you want. Here's the price, but it isn't really custom built for you and your energy needs. That's what we do.
So with that being said, the customer who is hearing that term for the first time, concierge utility, their mind will probably go to something that they're familiar with and something they know. So if you had to kind of differentiate, how does a concierge utility differ from other outsourced or managed services, like in an IT environment?
Yeah, and the reason we use the term concierge is because it really is a custom bespoke, solution for you. Whereas most managed services are sort of functionally the same from customer to customer. And Randall, if my memory serves me correctly, you used to sell managed services in IT and things like that. Yeah. Those are even, let's take managed IT services. So you're going to run my accounting system, you're going to run my ERP and all that. Well, what you're doing is you're really running servers and providing, hardware and things for some custom application to run, but the customization is still with the customer. So they know what their accounting system is. You're basically just hosting it. Yeah. In the case of energy, and again, it is a managed service. The difference is the breadth of it is so much broader. It's not just like, we're going to run these servers so you have your ERP system hosted. We have to understand, what are your goals with regard to green, with regard to carbon footprint? Because that definitely is going to have an impact on how we source energy. What are your needs for power as it relates to each hour of the day? Because pricing is very dynamic. most managed services are not integrated into an incredibly volatile, complex market. So the electricity market, prices change every minute, right? So if you're, really actively involved, it takes a lot to do that, more than I'm just running these servers. So it is a managed service. We do like to call ourselves a concierge utility because of that custom solution we provide.
Follow up on that. You mentioned the customization and kind of real time price changes and things along those lines. So it kind of begs the question, with deregulation out there, and now customers have the choice to go, pick a provider, and then the technology that's available. Why do companies need a concierge utility? Can't they just manage their energy themselves, with those tools?
Yeah, so sure, they can manage it themselves, and I hate to say it this way, they can manage it themselves, pay more, and do a lousy job. And the reason is that the markets are extraordinarily complex. So deregulation has been a great thing as it relates to is helped to drive prices down and things like that. But it has added so much complexity to the market. So let's take a little bit, we'll use the Wayback Machine if you're old enough to remember that cartoon, right?
Absolutely.
And take a look at, so historically, Energy One was pretty cheap, pretty reliable, and you really didn't worry about it. For the vast majority of organizations, energy is less than 4% of their cost of goods sold. Yeah. Right? So it's not a huge needle mover. We talk about, we need to be energy efficiency and, all that kind of stuff. But for a lot of organizations, energy may be expensive, but it's not a huge driver related to their cost of goods sold. And so therefore, it wasn't a big driver. It was relatively stable from the standpoint of price, and it was relatively cheap. What has happened since then? Number one, we've done deregulation. Great. That kept the prices low up until recently, but it increased the volatility tremendously. Energy prices, well, let's pick ERCOT, which is Texas right now. Prior to deregulation, you'd lock it in, everybody knows what they're going to get paid. Now it can range from negative 19 cents a kilowatt hour to $9 a kilowatt hour. Okay. All within the matter of maybe a few hours in the day. So if you're exposed to that, if you haven't really understand how you buy and you contract for energy, it can be a big hit, a really, really big hit. But if you think of energy from the standpoint of how important was it strategically to your business, that has also changed. Now, strategic is different than essential, right? Energy is absolutely essential, but it's not strategic generally because anybody's energy will work. An electron's an electron's an electron, and my competition's electrons are the same as my electrons. It's not a strategic differentiator historically. Now it is. And the reason it is because energy is what determines your carbon footprint. And carbon footprint has now become strategically important. Your ESG goals, your stock price, all of those things are now very, very much influenced by your carbon footprint. So now you've got energy has now become strategically important. It's become incredibly volatile in pricing. And what has happened is that because of that volatility, your standard utility tariffs and things like that, they're passing that risk volatility to you. So if you don't manage your energy, aggressively, essentially, and you just go with the standard utility tariff and things like that, you'll do fine. You won't have a lot of risk. You'll also pay a lot more than necessary. The other two factors that have really happened is we talk about carbon footprint. What drove carbon footprint is climate change. Yeah. What's driving additional complexity and the need for a concierge utility is climate change. And the climate change meaning that grid reliability has declined dramatically. So outages have increased by 14 times over the past 10 years. So the frequency of outages are up. The duration of outages are also up. And as everybody who, if you read the newspaper or watch the news knows, it's supposed to get worse. The grid is aging. We haven't kept up with the investments there. It's fragile. Extreme weather is becoming more frequent. And they're now talking about, again, with climate change, we have more load on the grid with EVs, air conditioning, and everything else. They're now talking about rolling blackouts and outages. You're running a business. You can't go down. So you need, like, where do I go for reliable power? Can't be from the grid, because if a storm comes through, knocks the wires down, I'm out. So I need backup power. But, backup power, where's that come from? No, it's natural gas. Great. Oh, but I have a carbon footprint. How do I manage that? So how do I get a zero carbon footprint and resiliency and lowest cost and everything else? There's so many pieces to manage today in energy. You need experts.
It's interesting. That was our first question from the attendees was, what if the goal of a company is decarbonization? How does the concierge utility fit in that? And, you touched on some of those points, that the reliability of the grid drives the need for backup power. And at the same time, the grid is incentivizing companies who have backup power. And then if you want to really take advantage of the fact that you as a company have backup power, the energy contracts that you're crafting for your primary energy needs to take into the account the fact that you have your backup power. So as opposed to the traditional managed service, concierge utility, you kind of sit in the middle of that. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I'm not sure you, rather than say sit in the middle, you are dynamically involved in the process minute by minute. Yeah. Customer has a load. You've got to manage that load for the customer, make sure that they've got the energy, the power they need, et cetera, under the right circumstances. So price, type of energy, is it solar, is it wind, is it hydro, is it natural gas, is it coal? What's the mix that's going to meet their goals of cost and their carbon footprint? Because there's a variety of things we can do. But let's say your specific question was, hey, we're trying to reduce to get to, let's say, a zero carbon footprint. You're not going to do that necessarily with natural gas boilers and things. So therefore, we have to say, all right, how are we going to transition to that? Well, a lot of that's going to come through electrification. Well, electrification requires capital. Somebody's got to put up the money to replace those, I'll say, natural gas boilers with electric boilers. Who's going to provide that capital? We'll provide the capital, right? Who's going to figure out what's the right, sourcing structure, given when you use your boilers, when you use your furnaces? How do you structure the purchase of that electricity? How do you size backup generators? How do you use those backup generators to support the grid to get better pricing and do things like demand response, but make sure that you're always available in case the grid goes down and the company needs you. So it is a dynamic management that requires a certain degree of, let's say, partnership between the customer and us, in order to get that, what we always say is the optimized custom solution for the customer.
Yeah, and I think that is an interesting thing, is in a lot of cases, a managed service provider, at the end of the day, they have a platform that they're positioning. They have a particular solution that they're positioning, that they're going to manage for you. And that concierge utility, you're going in there without the solution already baked. It's what does the customer need, and that drives the solution. That's a real differentiator.
Yeah, and let me just address sort of two more. One of them is, and going back to sort of a comparison to other managed services, right? I'll pick on IT service, managed services, right? So I outsource it. I've got a bunch of servers that are being hosted for me and they're running. They're probably mirrored and backed up at some other data center as well. They don't care a whole lot if I've got 100 people using it in 1 hour and then only 50 people a different hour. It's going to be the same thing. But they don't have things like outages. They can, right? But that's where they back it up and everything else. But if, somebody hits the pole outside of the facility and knocks out your cable link, your T1 is down, you're out. Okay. Is that managed service provider, that IT person, going to do? What are they going to do? There's nothing they can do, right? In the sense of you're down, you don't have internet or something like that. On the energy side, somebody hits the pole down the street, knocks out the transformer, and you're down. An energy managed service, we will keep you running. We'll have that backup generator in there. So we need to take account of a lot more issues and problems and things that most managed services don't have to. The other one I want to sort of pick on is this sort of deregulation is great. The Inflation Reduction Act is great, and it has made life for managers and businesses a nightmare. And it's because everybody's coming to you now with a point solution. They're going to say, so you got the energy brokers, right? They're coming and say, hey, we can source your electricity for you cheaper. They don't really study the intricacies of, do you have a backup generator? And if you do, is it grid enabled? Does it meet the air quality permits and things that we can use it this way? They'll get you a very good contract. It'll be more expensive, but they'll get you a good contract, but it won't take into account all these other things. But then you'll get the phone call and the knock on the door saying, oh, wow, with this, Inflation Reduction Act, you could put solar on your rooftop over there and get a great return and everything else. They're not incorrect, but the problem is once I put the solar on the rooftop, then that changes my energy consumption as it viewed by the grid, and it changes how I have to use a backup generator and all those things. So you can mess things up sort of really easy. Then you got people come and say, oh, what you need is a battery. Okay, with a battery, we can do, price arbitrage and the energy and stuff. And you got to stand back and say, wait a minute, what business am I in?
Yeah.
So what is my customer value creation? And does that mean I'm an energy company? Or does that mean I use energy to transform something that creates value to the customer? That's the business I'm in. And many times what we're trying to do with, executives and things to say, no, you want to be in the energy market. You want to play in energy and you want to, and make these great returns. No, you don't. Okay. You want to focus on your business. And in that way, it's the same as any other outsourcing thing. Focus on your business. We will focus on getting you the best energy solution to meet your broad corporate requirements, and let us manage it and not you. And, management time and management sort of mental bandwidth is probably the most important resource in an organization.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, if my business is, I don't know what I'm going to say, I'm making bread, right? I'm a bakery, I'm making bread. If I have to also manage dynamically in real time energy and things like that, that's time away from my brain takes time away from the real value creation stuff, customer relations, building my business and things like that. Focus on your business. Energy is essential, but not energy is essential. It's strategic with regard to your carbon footprint, but we're better able to manage the carbon footprint issues for you because we take into account all of the pieces, the natural gas, your boilers, your electricity, all of that.
Yeah, and you're looking at things strategically so that executive doesn't have to become well versed enough in it to where they could do that strategic thinking on it. And and that's the number one thing I get when I talk to executives. What's the greatest challenge I could help you address? Number one, it's give me more time back. If you can give me more time back in my calendar so I can do the things that I should be doing, you're a benefit. And that's exactly what you do.
And, and it's not just executive, facility manager, they're constantly getting the call like, hey, would you like to participate in demand response and turn off your machines? You could make, you could save a lot of money. Yeah, I could. But then when you call me and then I have to shut down production, and it's like, no, just focus on your business. We'll take care of managing your energy to get you the best overall solution.
Yeah, and that overall is, I think, the key part there. And you look and managed services and outsourcing, products have been, around for a long time. So why do you think that concierge utility is just something that's coming up now? We're just starting to hear about now.
Because of those two implications. One is that the markets have become so much more volatile than they used to. And that's a combination of factors. Certainly the war in Ukraine didn't help, right? Because we saw, natural gas prices spike that, then has an effect on electricity. The grid with climate change, reliability and outages are a real problem today. They didn't used to be. And people are saying, how do I manage this, right? The old go-to, like, oh, we'll buy a backup generator. Oh, sure, go buy a backup generator. That's money out of your pockets. It's going to sit there 99.5% of the time doing nothing unless you know how to use it to participate in grid services like demand response, but you don't know how to do that. So then you got to deal with another company that'll do that for you, but then they're not going to handle the procurement of your energy with the knowledge that you got a backup generator that you could use to participate in these things. So just the number of variables has come up so tremendously just within the last couple of years. But then most importantly is going to be the strategic aspect of this, which is the carbon footprint. And we talk to, tons and tons of executives. Do the survey. Everybody's got carbon goals now, carbon footprint goals. Oh, we're going to be net zero by 2030. Oh, net zero by 2040. And they all have goals. You know what? Goals are great. Plans are wonderful, and execution is sort of like the money hits the road, right?
Yeah.
So what we're seeing is everybody's setting these goals, but they have no idea how to get there.
Yeah. And a lot of times they can't even quantify what the term means that they're throwing around.
Many of them can't. They're getting better because you got science-based, stuff and everything else. But it's kind of like, they can get the first 15%, kind of like incrementally. We'll buy solar power, or we'll do some energy efficiency. And then they hit the wall and they go like, what do we do with the rest of this? That's where a concierge utility comes in. Now, sometimes you might not like the answer we're going to give you.
Right.
It's like, you want to get the zero partner. I'm sorry?
Yeah, and if it's a real partner, they're going to bring things to you that you might not like the answer of, or that make you look at what your true goals are, and then you can decide, is that really a goal of ours, or is it not? And that really is a partner.
Yeah, but that's why it is important that it's that concierge relationship where there's a dialogue back and forth.
Yeah.
You have this goal. Here are the implications of that goal, given our, again, in-depth understanding of how you operate, how you use energy. If you want to get there without any change in your operation, this is what it's going to cost. This is what's going to require. Now, remember, we put up the capital and everything else, but at the end of the day, they still got to pay it, through the rates. But we can then help them and say, if you change your process this way or this way, we could do a much, much better job. They may not get that information, certainly not from an energy broker. They're not going to get it from a backup, generator distributor or their electrical contractor. They need a utility that is focused on their energy requirements.
Yeah. And, a company that has all of those varied responsibilities and they're not quite sure exactly where to go at any of it, but they know they need to be doing something, and can kind of see the writing on the wall. They bring in a concierge utility like an Exergy. How is their life different, going forward once they establish that relationship and they bring Exergy in compared to, I have my, facility director and an EPC puts in backup power and it's just sitting there. Then we have a broker who gets our energy acquisition. And then we're looking at, how can we lower our carbon footprint? We got somebody else tasked with that. how is life different when they have a concierge utility in place?
So, all right, here's anyway. It's about dealing with pain initially so you can sleep well at night from then on. And what I mean by that is nobody likes giving up something. Well, we've always bought our own energy, and we don't necessarily want to get into a long-term contract, because as a concierge utility, we'll make you green, we'll make you resilient, we'll save you money, it doesn't cost you anything up front. But let's be honest, guys, we're getting married here. So you're going to sign a long-term agreement with us, which may be, 10 or 15 years, and we're going to make sure you got the best solution, but it's a long-term agreement. That's painful for many executives. Is like, oh, I don't know if I want to make those kinds of commitments. Mm-hmm. Once you get over and they understand and say, here is your life today, here's what your life's going to be in the future if you don't do something like a concierge utility, and here's what life is like otherwise, there's a great relief, because right now energy prices are so volatile. So they sort of look at this and saying, what's going to happen 3 years from now? Am I going to be competitive? How do I plan for this, et cetera? We can bring that certainty to it with a lot less risk than they would have themselves, right? So they could either get rid of the risk by paying exorbitant prices, or they can get great pricing, you save a lot of money, meet their carbon footprint requirements and everything else at a lot lower cost. But it does take that partnership of somebody who's going to work with you, essentially work for you is probably more important. We work for you as your independent power plant, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, you look going forward as an executive in this space. And when you're specifically talking about your energy environment and, reliability and business continuity and all those topics that are top of mind. And you're hard pressed to find an analyst that says that grid reliability, market volatility, those things are all going to get better in the near term. You're hard pressed to find an analyst that'll say that. So, in the challenge of, you can typically in most areas of your business, you can look historically, look at all the data there and use that to make future decisions. And in this space, that goes out the window because of things like climate change and the transition to renewables on the grid. So having that concierge utility in place becomes even more important as you look long term.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate to say this, but we're not seeing the dedication and the commitment by, I'll call it the government, politics, or whatever, to literally plan and execute how are we going to get to zero carbon. Yeah, we make all these, goals and, platitudes and things like that, but we don't have a plan. Literally, we don't have a plan. And then what we do is we pass something like the Inflation Reduction Act. Fantastic. Great. Lots of incentives. That is completely unplanned. So it's throwing a lot of money at things, right? So if you look at things like we're going to do solar. Solar's fantastic. The interconnection, queue for solar is now 3 to 4 years for utility scale stuff, right? In PJM, they put on a moratorium. We're not going to look at anything until 2026.
Yeah, and that's just to look at it.
So it's like, okay, and we're supposed to go to zero carbon by 2030, 40 or something like that? No, you're not going to get there. But what is going to happen is that we're going to continue to put more intermittent renewables in there. We don't have enough battery capacity and things ever that you're going to be able to manage a fully renewable grid. So things are going to get less stable, less reliable. Demand is going to continue to go up as we electrify things. We put EVs in there, and things like that. And then we got climate change. And climate change is with extreme weather and all of that. You can't rely on anybody else. I can't say, the grid will take care of it. It isn't. The politics will take care of it. They won't, right? The Inflation Reduction Act will take care of it. It doesn't. It's not structured. It's not planned. So it now falls on the executive, on the business owner or business manager to say, I have to take personal responsibility to protect my business. I have to make sure that I'm sustainable. I need to make sure I'm resilient and I can keep running when the grid has problems and things like that. That is a huge undertaking in addition to their day job, right? Of,
Right. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
something.
Making the widgets that is their core business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why you need us in your corner to help you
Yeah.
out.
And it's interesting, looking forward, the companies that do that and take the fact that they're going to have to, provide their own energy in some cases, as the grid reliability goes down, they're gonna win because the grid suppliers and it appears that over the next several years, those people who can self-generate are going to be incentivized by their utilities to a greater and greater degree when those utilities come under stress. So the companies that have taken that proactive, positioning that they're not going to rely on somebody else, they will be winners.
Yeah. And I worry so much about the hype that's in the market. Like, oh, batteries, we're going to do anything else. Look at the Bloomberg report. Okay. Not enough capacity is going to come online in batteries to have a significant impact on resiliency for the next 30 years. Oh, we do solar. We need solar and wind. In order to get to that zero carbon grid, we need to be investing in 3 times more than we're currently doing every year for the next 20 years. The supply chains, this stuff just isn't there, right?
Yeah.
So you've got to take responsibility for your own resiliency and things like that. And look, we can look at the statistics. How much have we reduced CO2 emissions as the globe? 0, right?
Yeah.
It's still going up. So this idea, when we like to pat ourselves on the back and say, "Whoa, the U.S., our CO2 emissions are down from what they were." Not actually. COVID helped a lot there, but it's a global problem, right? CO2 isn't down. This idea is we're going to hit this 1.5 degrees centigrade. Almost nobody believes that anymore. And if that's the case, then this extreme weather is going to continue to get worse. And just an interesting stat here. We think about grid reliability, and I don't mean to throw, the grid and generators and things under the bus, but it's typically not a generator problem. It's an infrastructure challenge because of weather. 78% of grid outages to customers are downed wires or downed wires due to wind, snow, tree limbs, all that kind of stuff. I don't care what batteries aren't going to help you do that. It's like, oh, we're going to do the solar farm with lights of batteries. Well, the battery is great for the intermittency of the solar, but if that hurricane comes through and knocks down those power lines, that battery's sitting out there doing nothing for you.
Yeah.
When you talk about resiliency, you got to be local. When I mean local, I mean at your facility. That's where you got to focus. Unless we bury every wire underground in titanium, conduit or something like that to protect it during an earthquake, resiliency, reliability is a local issue down to the facility level.
Yeah, and making those kind of decisions and those kind of investments, you need a partner who that truly is their strength, and that's what
something that companies need to realize is these investments, and we're now talking in infrastructure investments, the grid, et cetera. We're talking trillions. The last I saw was a $3 trillion investment just in transmission infrastructure. Somebody's got to pay for that.
Absolutely.
And how do you pay for it? Now, here's the sort of the dirty little secret about the grid. The grid has to be sized for the worst case scenario, so that the polar vortex in February in New England, the 125 degrees in Texas in the summertime or something, everybody turns on the air conditioners or heat pumps, whatever the case may be. The grid has to be able to supply that. But on a day-to-day basis, so all that infrastructure, the size of the wires, the size of the transformers, everything has got to be for that sort of worst case scenario. But on a day-to-day basis, we use less than 50% of the capacity of the grid. Less than 50%. Who pays for it? So, and how does it, so we all pay for it. If you're if you're a residential customer or something, you got your tariff from the utility, it's not a big deal, right? But businesses pay based upon how much demand they put on the grid. Now, that's actually the right sort of economic way to do it, right? Because under the worst case scenario, you're pulling from the grid, you should pay your pro rata share of that.
Yeah.
But if I've got a generator, either CHP or a backup generator or something like that, I don't need to put my load on the grid during that worst period of time. So in PJM, which is the Mid-Atlantic states, what you pay in your demand charges is determined by how much load you had on the grid during 5 hours of the previous year, which they won't tell you, which you don't know until the year is over, how much you're going to pay. If you're in Texas, it's 4 hours. So 4 hours can determine 40 to 60% of your bill. Okay. If you manage that strategically or manage it dynamically and watch the grid, know when those events are going to happen, know what the grid load is and say, hey, I'm going to turn my generator on, reduce my load, I can dramatically reduce my energy costs. In some areas of the country, you can literally pay for a backup generator just from the reduction of your demand charges. But you have to time it. You have to know when those are going to happen. And that comes down to management again. That's not the business of our bakery or of our widget manufacturer to be monitoring the grid, understand when to turn generators on and how to take hedge positions and things like that. It has a dramatic impact on their costs, their resiliency, their carbon footprint, and all those things. But you really do need somebody who's literally in that market and managing it every day to do that. And that's the concierge utility.
Yeah, and you can leverage the experience, the expertise, the knowledge base, and then also the funding of having that partner in place, as opposed to CapEx investment. And
yeah, I mean, let's look at it honestly here. Companies, the value of a company is mostly determined by its revenue growth rate, new customer acquisition, and its gross margin. Okay, a growing company, the PE ratio related to the growth rate in organic growth of sales, okay, that multiplier is substantially higher for growth than it is for just profitability. So if you really care about the value of your corporation, what you want to do is focus your CapEx on building your business, growing your market share, growing your customer base, new customer acquisition. And I'll tell you something, buying a backup generator ain't going to do that. Okay. Managing people that need to manage your energy rather than managing your product development people and marketeers and salespeople ain't going to do that. Right. So you really want to use somebody else's capital. And that's what we do. We provide the capital, but we own the asset. And the reason we own it and provide the concierge utility, we provide it as a service, is we know how to use that asset in order to reduce your demand charges, participate in demand response, share those savings with you as well. But we know how to do it. That frees up your capital to be able to grow your business. So as I said, we can make you green and reduce your carbon footprint. We can save you money. We can make you resilient. Doesn't cost you anything up front. What's the catch? The catch is we're going to have a long-term relationship that after a very short period of time, you will value tremendously.
Tremendously. and the customer that's out there and they hear this and they see the pain points that are coming, in the future when it comes to their energy environment, and they want to have, a concierge utility take a look at their operation and see, is that something that would benefit us? What's the best way for them to get a hold of Exergy and engage Exergy in that opportunity? What's that look like?
So you can come visit us on the web, www.exergyenergy.com. There's a lot of material on there, a lot of videos, a lot of ebooks and things like that. Just go to the contact us. One of the best ways, of course, is through LinkedIn. We're very active in LinkedIn. We post every day. You might find our, come follow us. We post every day, mostly on things that have interest in the energy, to energy users in the energy space. So follow us on LinkedIn. And then also we run a weekly LinkedIn live event like this called All Things Energy. And we discuss things like carbon capture or backup generators or batteries or things like that. Join us there, and sure, reach out to any of us. You can go to our LinkedIn page, and all our people will be there. You can reach out to us that way.
Great. Well, thank you, Dave, for the time. This has been very helpful. And again, if anybody has any questions that we weren't able to address here, leave a comment, and we'll make sure to get that information back to you. So everybody have a great afternoon, and thanks again, Dave.
Randall, thank you, and have a great evening.
You
Take
as well.
care.